welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to explore how to make large language models more efficient, especially when they're tackling those complex reasoning tasks. We've got an excerpt from a research paper titled Efficiently Serving LLM Reasoning Programs with Certaindex to guide our conversation.
Sounds good.
So how can we get these LLMs to the right answer, faster without needing a supercomputer?
Well, it's fascinating to see how large language models, or LLMs, have evolved beyond just, understanding language, and now they're actually reasoning.
Right.
These LLM reasoning programs are really key here.
Yeah.
They provide a structure for LLMs to, approach these complex problems in a systematic way.
Yeah, these reasoning programs, they seem to be working well.
Yeah.
But they often require a lot of computing power.
Right.
For optimal accuracy.
And that's where this concept of Certaindex comes in.
Oh.
Researchers have found a way to tap into the LLM's own sense of certainty as it works through a problem. And this Certaindex metric, it actually correlates with the compute resources needed for a correct answer.
From the research, it looks like Certaindex can be measured in several different ways.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. So for algorithms like self-consistency, rebase, and Monte Carlo tree search, we use something called semantic entropy.
Okay.
And this quantifies the diversity of answers generated by different reasoning paths. So a higher entropy basically means more uncertainty from the LLM.
I see.
And then a lower entropy, of course, means more certainty.
Okay.
We also have, reward models where the score itself acts as a measure of certainty. So a higher reward score usually means that the LLM is on the right track.
So essentially, we're using the LLM's own, confidence level to sort of fine-tune how much resources it uses.
Exactly.
I see.
Yeah.
The paper mentions a system called Dynasor that was built using the Certaindex concept.
Right.
What can you tell us about it?
So Dynasor is the system that optimizes how LLM reasoning programs are using their compute resources.
Okay.
You can think of it almost like a traffic cop, directing traffic to where it's needed the most.
Okay.
And it's got three key components.
Okay.
We've got reasoning program abstraction, application runtime, and then system runtime.
Okay.
So the reasoning program abstraction that provides this standardized way to define how Certaindex is calculated and how resources are controlled.
So once that Certaindex value has been measured, how does Dynasor actually use it?
So the application runtime, that's like the core of Dynasor's decision-making process.
Okay.
It keeps tabs on the Certaindex of each reasoning program, and then it figures out how much compute power to allocate based on these predefined policies.
So it's like Dynasor's acting as a sort of resource manager, like making sure that each program gets what it needs.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, and what about the third component, system runtime? What's that all about?
So the system runtime, that handles all the behind-the-scenes stuff. Like scheduling requests, managing memory, making sure everything's running smoothly. Right. It's essentially the operational backbone of the whole system.
Yes.
Okay.
One thing that really stood out to me in the research was this idea of gang scheduling within Dynasor.
Yeah, gang scheduling.
How does that help optimize things?
So imagine you've got multiple reasoning programs running at the same time, right?
Right.
Gang scheduling basically makes sure that all the requests from a single program are, grouped and prioritized together.
Okay.
This reduces context switching, and then it lets each program make progress much more efficiently.
So instead of just jumping back and forth between different programs, Dynasor focuses on one at a time and gets it done faster.
Yes, exactly.
That's really interesting to see how Dynasor is tackling that resource allocation problem in such a practical way.
Yeah.
But I guess the real question is, does it actually work?
Yeah.
What were the results of Dynasor's evaluation?
Well, the researchers, they tested Dynasor on all sorts of data sets and reasoning algorithms.
Oh, yeah.
And, in batch processing, Dynasor reduced token usage, which translates to cost savings by up to 50% compared to traditional methods.
Wow.
All while maintaining the same level of accuracy.
That's a significant improvement.
It is. It is.
What about performance in online settings?
Right.
Where you've got, a constant stream of requests coming in.
Well, Dynasor was able to handle much higher request rates in those settings.
Really?
Yeah, it was processing more problems in the same amount of time, and it was meeting these stricter latency requirements.
So it's not just about saving money.
No.
It's also about speed and responsiveness.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
The researchers used a specific data set called GSM8K to test Dynasor.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
So GSM-8K, it's basically this benchmark dataset that's used to evaluate mathematical reasoning abilities in LLMs. It's made up of thousands of these grade school level math word problems.
Interesting.
And Dynasor actually achieved some really impressive results on this dataset,
Yeah.
using up to 50% fewer tokens than traditional approaches, again, to achieve the same level of accuracy.
That's remarkable.
It is.
It seems like Dynasor is really making these LLMs think smarter,
Yeah,
not harder.
that is a good way to put it.
The paper also mentions LLMs with built-in reasoning capabilities.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
So models like OpenAI's O1, and then there's the open source QuinnQWQ.
Okay.
These are good examples.
Mhm.
These models, they actually generate these extended chains of thought internally.
Right.
So they're essentially reasoning their way through problems step by step.
So the reasoning process is like ingrained in the model's architecture.
Exactly.
Did the researchers explore applying the principles of Dynasor to these, internalized reasoning models?
They did. They focused specifically on QuinnQWQ,
Okay.
and they found that while it's powerful, QWQ can be pretty inefficient under strict token limits.
I see.
It tends to generate these very long chains of thought,
Uh-huh.
which can lead to inconclusive answers
So-
if it runs out of tokens before it reaches a conclusion.
So it's like a detective who gets so caught up in every single detail
Yeah,
that they run out of time to solve the case.
that's a great analogy, yeah.
To overcome this, the researchers developed two optimizations, QWQ guided and QWQ cut.
Right.
QWQ guided prompts the model to actually provide an answer after each iteration, rather than waiting till the end of its chain of thought.
Exactly.
So it's like we're checking in with the detective regularly to see if they've made any breakthroughs.
Exactly.
And this approach, it significantly reduced token consumption
Yes.
without sacrificing accuracy.
Right.
Then they applied the concept to Certaindex to further optimize this process, and that led to QWQ cut.
That's right.
I'm curious to learn a little bit more about this QWQ cut optimization.
Yeah.
How does it work?
So with QWQ cut, they're basically monitoring that Certaindex of the answers, after each iteration.
Okay.
And if the Certaindex goes above a certain threshold, indicating like high confidence,
Right.
they just stop the generation process right there. This prevents the model from, wasting tokens on steps that aren't really necessary.
So Certaindex is really playing this crucial role in Dynasor's like dynamic resource allocation.
Yeah.
Can we dig a little deeper into how Certaindex is actually measured?
Sure. So as we touched on earlier, one approach is using that semantic entropy
Right.
for algorithms like self-consistency, rebase, and MCTS.
Mm-hmm.
You essentially normalize this entropy value to get a certain dex score
Okay.
between 0 and 1,
Got it.
where 1 represents absolute certainty.
And then for algorithms that use a reward model, the reward score itself is basically a measure of certainty.
Exactly. Researchers have found that regardless of how it's measured, Certaindex tends to correlate really strongly with how much compute you need for a correct answer.
Interesting. So the paper talks about two main approaches to resource allocation: thresholding-based allocation and then Pareto frontier allocation.
Right.
Can you explain those?
Sure. So thresholding is basically setting this certain dex threshold.
Okay.
And if a reasoning program's certain dex, exceeds that threshold,
Right.
you just stop giving it more compute resources. That's it.
So that approach seems like it would be effective for problems that are relatively easy for the LLM to solve.
Yeah.
What about more complex problems where you
Right.
might need those additional resources even if you've got high certainty?
Well, that's where Pareto frontier allocation comes in.
Yeah.
It's a more dynamic approach where instead of having a fixed threshold,
Right.
you've got this curve that maps different certain dex values to different compute allocations.
So it's a more nuanced way to adjust those compute resources based on the LLM's confidence level.
Exactly.
Did the researchers actually test these allocation strategies out?
Oh, yeah. They implemented these strategies in Dynasor, and they ran a bunch of experiments.
Okay.
And Dynasor was able to achieve these really significant reductions in token usage and latency compared to these traditional approaches,
Yeah.
while still maintaining or even improving the accuracy.
The paper also mentions a comparison of Certaindex to other potential signals for resource allocation.
Right.
Can you shed some light on that?
Sure. So they looked at things like reasoning path length
No, fair.
and the average LAR probability of, generated tokens as potential indicators of, how much compute might be needed.
And how did Certaindex stack up against those alternatives?
Well, Certaindex consistently outperformed all the other signals
Okay.
across different tasks and models, showing that it's a really reliable predictor of compute requirements.
The paper also discusses fairness
Yes.
in resource allocation, when you've got multiple reasoning programs running at the same time.
Right.
How does Dynasor ensure that things stay fair?
So Dynasor uses this combination of gang scheduling
Right.
and an approximate shortest job first scheduling algorithm.
Okay, and how do those mechanisms promote fairness?
So gang scheduling, as we discussed, groups and prioritizes those requests from a single program
Right.
to prevent it from being starved of resources.
Uh-huh.
And then the shortest job first algorithm prioritizes the programs that are estimated to have, shorter execution times.
Okay.
So essentially all the reasoning programs get a fair shot at accessing the resources they need.
The insights from this research really highlight, the importance of using these powerful LLMs
Yeah,
intelligently and efficiently.
absolutely.
So while Dynasor focuses on optimizing, existing LLM reasoning programs, there's also this exploration into developing models with, that internalized reasoning capability,
Yeah,
like QuinnQWQ.
exactly. It incorporates that reasoning behavior,
Yep.
similar to OpenAI's O1. It's really an alternative approach to problem solving.
However, QWQ can run into some inefficiency issues when you've got token limits
Yes, that's right.
because of its tendency to generate those lengthy chain of thought sequences.
Yeah.
Right. So despite its potential, QWQ's internal reasoning can become a bottleneck if it doesn't have enough tokens to work with.
Yeah, if it runs out of tokens before reaching a conclusion, you end up with an incomplete answer.
To address this, researchers have been exploring two optimization techniques,
Uh-huh.
QWQ guided and QWQ cut.
Right.
So QWQ guided basically prompts the model to provide an answer after each iteration.
Yeah, instead of waiting until the very end of its thought process.
Right. So it's like a more proactive way to prevent the model from getting stuck in that long chain of thought without a resolution. Can you tell us a bit more about QWQ cut?
Sure. QWQ cut takes advantage of that Certaindex idea, again, by looking at the Certaindex of the answers at each step.
Okay.
The model can actually be stopped early
Uh-huh.
if it's already showing, high confidence.
Okay.
So you're basically saving those tokens for when they're really needed.
So it seems like these optimization techniques are really promising
Yeah.
for making those internalized reasoning models like QWQ,
Right.
more practical for real-world applications where you have those token limits.
Absolutely.
This whole deep dive into LLM reasoning programs,
Yeah.
Dynasor,
Mm.
it's been incredibly insightful.
It really highlights the exciting advancements that are happening in this field.
Yeah.
The possibilities for these LLM reasoning programs, they're vast, and they just keep growing.
As these LLM reasoning programs advance,
Yeah.
it's going to be really important to address those challenges
Yeah.
associated with those token limits, especially for models like QWQ.
Right.
What other areas of research related to LLM reasoning programs are you particularly excited about?
Well, there's a lot of ongoing work into developing even more sophisticated methods
Okay.
for measuring and utilizing Certaindex. And another exciting area is looking into, new reasoning algorithms that can actually use Certaindex to improve their efficiency and their accuracy.
It sounds like the field of LLM reasoning is just rapidly evolving
Oh, absolutely.
with tons of promising directions for the future.
There's so much more to explore and discover in terms of, optimizing these LLM reasoning programs and expanding what these powerful language models can do.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of LLM reasoning programs.
It was my pleasure.
It's been a really enlightening conversation.
Yeah, it's been great talking about this with you.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to check out the show notes for links to the research paper
Yes, definitely.
if you want to learn more.
Good idea.
Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.